All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're going to challenge a story pretty much all of us learned as kids, the discovery of America. Because it turns out, Christopher Columbus might have been one of the last people to the party.
You know, for hundreds of years, the story was simple. Columbus discovered America in 1492. And look, his voyage absolutely changed the world, kicking off this permanent link between two halves of the planet. But was he the first person from across the ocean to land there? Not by a long shot. There's this whole field of study called pre-Columbian contact, and it is jam-packed with solid proof, really compelling theories, and some just plain wild legends.
And get this, even the story of Columbus himself has this crazy prequel legend. It's called The Story of the Unknown Pilot, and it claims Columbus didn't just sail into the blue. Nope. The story goes he got his hands on a secret map from a sailor who'd been shipwrecked in the Americas and somehow made it back. Now, we don't know if it's true, but it really makes you wonder who else might have known the way.
So here's our game plan. We're going to start with the one case we can absolutely prove. Then we'll check out some incredible theories from Asia and Africa. After that, we'll dive into some of history's greatest mysteries. And finally, we'll take a step back and think about what discovery even means.
Okay, let's kick things off with the one group we know for a fact 100% made it to North America almost 500 years before Columbus. I'm talking, of course, about the Vikings. For the longest time, people thought their epic sagas were just stories until we found the proof.
So take a look at this timeline. Around the year 1000, Leif Erikson makes landfall. But this wasn't just a quick trip. They kept coming back. His brother Thorvald tried. An explorer named Thorfinn Karlsefni tried to set up a real settlement. All told, they had a presence in North America for nearly 300 years.
And this isn't just from some old storybook. Up in Newfoundland, Canada, at a place called Lonzo Meadows, archaeologists hit the jackpot. They dug up the remains of an actual Viking village. They found buildings with turf walls, exactly like the ones in Greenland and Iceland, and even a blacksmith's workshop with iron tools. This was the smoking gun. This turned legend into history.
So you might be wondering, if they made it, why didn't they get the credit? Why didn't their discovery change the world? Well, the simple answer is, they just couldn't stick it out. The winters were brutal, they were constantly short on supplies, and they got into violent conflicts with the local tribes, who they called Scrawlings. In the end, they just had to pack up and go home.
All right, let's hop over to the other side of the world. For centuries, Europeans were obsessed with sailing west to get to the east. But what if people in the east just kept sailing east? That question brings us to some really compelling theories about Chinese explorers reaching the Americas.
There's this pretty controversial idea called the 1421 hypothesis, which claims a Chinese admiral named Zheng He beat Columbus by 70 years. And when you look at the tech, you can see how it might have been possible. Just look at this comparison. Zheng He's junk ships were massive, floating fortresses. They were almost 7 times longer than Columbus's Santa Maria and had advanced tech like watertight compartments. His fleet was hundreds of ships strong, while Columbus had 3. They definitely had the capability.
But, and this is a big but, the hard proof just isn't there. For a while, people pointed to a supposed 15th century Chinese map that showed the Americas. It seemed like a huge piece of evidence, but it was later proven to be a fake, a copy of a much later European map. And that was a major blow to the whole theory.
But the idea of Chinese sailors reaching America goes back way, way further than Zheng He. We're talking all the way back to the year 499 AD. A Buddhist monk named Hui Shen comes back from this epic journey and tells stories of a land called Fuzan, about 8,000 kilometers to the east. And the crazy part? That's almost exactly the distance from China to the west coast of North America.
Now, for our next story, we're heading to West Africa, to one of the wealthiest empires the world has ever seen, the Mali Empire. They had unbelievable amounts of gold, and, as it turns out, a deep, deep curiosity about what was out there.
So before the legendary Mansa Musa, there was his predecessor, Mansa Abu Bakari II, and this guy wasn't your typical king. He was completely obsessed with what was on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. So obsessed, in fact, that he was willing to give up his entire kingdom to find out.
His first attempt was with a fleet of 400 ships. Only one came back. So did he give up? No way. In 1311, he put together a second expedition. And this time, he went bigger, way bigger. We're talking 2,000 ships. And he didn't just send them off. He gave up the throne and got on one of the ships to lead the voyage himself. So what happened to them? Well, according to the stories passed down for generations in Mali,
Abubakari and his massive fleet were just gone. They never came back. The story suggests they made it, possibly to the coast of Brazil. And while there's no definite proof, like a shipwreck, it's an incredible story that might just explain some of the scattered clues of African influence found in that part of the world.
Okay, so we've covered the proven and the plausible. Now let's dive into the really fun stuff: the myths, the mysteries, and the legends. These are the stories that really blur the lines, but they show that the human itch to explore is just universal.
First up, there's this popular tale in Great Britain about a Welsh prince named Madoc. Supposedly, he sailed to America way back in 1170. The only catch? No one ever wrote about it until after Columbus came back, which makes it seem a little convenient, right? It was basically used by England to try and one-up Spain's claim to the New World.
And then you've got one of history's all-time greatest mysteries, the Knights Templar. When the Pope and the King of France took them down in 1307, their entire fleet just vanished. Poof, gone. One of the wildest theories is that they sailed across the Atlantic. The evidence is super thin, but people point to things like Mayan gods being shown with beards, which is strange because Native American men couldn't genetically grow them.
But what about even further back? Could the ancient Egyptians have done it? Well, this legendary explorer, Thor Heyerdahl, thought so. And to prove it wasn't impossible, he built a boat, the Ra II, using only the same materials and techniques the ancient Egyptians had. And in 1970, he sailed it all the way from Morocco to Barbados. He proved it could be done.
So, after all that, Vikings, Chinese admirals, Malian kings, Welsh princes, what are we supposed to make of it all? Well, maybe it means we've been asking the wrong question this whole time.
First, let's clear something up. Columbus did not set out to prove the world was round. That's a total myth. Educated people had known the Earth was a sphere for more than 1,500 years. A Greek guy named Eratosthenes had even calculated how big it was with almost perfect accuracy all the way back in 275 BC.
See, the real barrier to crossing the ocean was never a lack of imagination. It was about the cold, hard reality of the journey itself. It was a massive challenge of technology, of getting a ridiculous amount of money, of politics and ambition, and honestly, just a huge amount of luck to survive.
The Vikings proved that pre-Columbian contact happened. That's a fact. But what made Columbus's journey so different, so world-changing, was what came next. His voyage kicked off a permanent, non-stop connection between the Old World and the New, for better and, in many cases, for much, much worse. His wasn't the first voyage, but it was absolutely the most consequential.
So in the end, yeah, the Vikings are the only ones who left behind a receipt, so to speak. But history is just filled with these ghost ships, these ancient stories, and these little clues that make you wonder. Knowing that people have always wanted to see what's over the horizon, and that they knew there was something over there, it leaves you with one last really fascinating question. How many other incredible stories are out there, still lost to time?